Everyone is warmly welcomed to the Institute of World Culture in Santa Barbara today. As you probably know, the Institute is a nonprofit educational institute and offers programs like this 9 months out of the year, every Saturday, and also has a Wednesday night study class, or rather Tuesday night study class. And it is also solely supported through donations from wonderful folks like yourselves, and is, of course, dedicated to lifelong learning in the promotion of universal brotherhood. Links to upcoming events and also information about what the study group is currently undertaking can be found on their website at www.worldculture.org. And in fact, next month, March 9th, there is a program which will not be streamed live as this one is, but will be offered at the Institute in the seminar room, called King Lear and the Heart of Politics. And that's Saturday, March 9th. From 2 to 4:30, and that will be presented by Marlon Rule. I'd like to also mention that anyone can sign up to receive the monthly newsletter from the Institute. That can be done online or here in the hall. And there, at the back of the room, there's a table in which both the general aims of the Institute and the upcoming programs can be found. The 10 aims of the Institute are articulated in what is called the Declaration of Interdependence, and they provide a foundation for all Institute programs. Based on these aims, the theme chosen for 2024 is creating a culture of conscience. And this is especially relevant to today's talk on artificial intelligence, Daedalus and Icarus, because it gives us an opportunity to consider how the very frontiers of science and technology can perhaps help humanity solve its many problems that it seems to be struggling with. Perhaps how to heal and restore the planet, how to better resolve conflicts across the globe between cultures and nations, and how can we move towards a more equitable distribution of resources. So that raises the question, can artificial intelligence compute moral mathematics, or is it just strictly mathematics? Today's talk also points to, in particular, one of the aims of the Institute, number 6, to promote forums for fearless inquiry and constructive dialogue concerning the frontiers of science, the therapeutics of self-transformation, and the societies of the future. We have 2 presenters today, the first being Russ Lewin, who is particularly suited to giving this talk today. He's a recently retired teacher of math, science, and robotics and videography at Santa Barbara Middle School, where he taught for 29 years. And Russ is also well-known in the community as a teacher on many fronts, deeply interested in the betterment of humanity and planetary welfare, in particular through the right application of scientific knowledge. And of course, Russ is also a longtime member of the Institute and has given dozens of talks and presentations on science and technology, which I won't enumerate because we'll be here all day. But he did also, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, on the emerging revolution of AI. Isn't that correct? 2 or 3? Who knows? We'll have to look that one up later. And presenting with Russ today, we're very fortunate to have one of Russ's students, Aidan Colbert, who has studied at the computer science department at the University of Washington in Tacoma, and who is especially interested in the intersection of ethics and technology, presumably along the lines we've already been mentioning. He's also an avid reader, has, according to Russ, a very active and well-developed imagination, and a kind of magnetic kindness. So we're looking forward to this joint presentation today.
Well, welcome everybody. Can everybody hear okay right now, or should we speak more loudly? A little more loud? Yeah. Is that loud enough? Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Kirk, for your introduction, which is no doubt going to be better than today's presentation. So let's just dive right into our slides. And so today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and base it on this ancient myth of Daedalus and Icarus. But to get started, I just thought I'd give you my weekly highlights. Every week I see more new and interesting things in AI. I'll just start off by sharing a couple with you. So if I go to Sora, which is a new part of OpenAI that's being currently developed, and I prompt it to make me a short film of a bicycle race on the ocean with different animals as athletes riding the bicycles from the viewpoint of a drone camera. Could it turn that into a video? Whoops, hang on. Where's the video? Try again. Yeah. Completely based on AI. And we'll discuss AI soon and discuss how it would do something like that. Or I could say, give it a prompt, give me some historical footage of California during the gold rush. This is all generated by a computer. It just has sifted through the internet, film clips, generated what it thinks, how it thinks it should interpret the gold rush and actually produce a film. There's no cameras involved here. There's no production. There's nothing like that. This is all done by AI. If you're wondering why there was an actor's strike and a writer's strike, that's why. That's literally why. How about if we look at a petri dish with a bamboo forest growing within it that has tiny red pandas running around it? Completely AI. This will be available to everybody in the coming months, probably. And then one other, a cat waking up its sleeping owner demanding breakfast. The owner tries to ignore the cat, but the cat tries new tactics. Now, it's interesting because they're giving some nuance in there. And yet, so that's not an actual cat, that's not an actual person, that's not nothing. All of that was done by AI. Those are 4 of my 5 top highlights for the week. And another thing is that there's now and this is truly cutting edge, to take human brain waves. So when we think or we speak, we generate actual wavelengths or energies, and that these energies can actually be recorded. So AI is matching up certain brain waves with certain words, and actually will be able to translate it so that computers going forward, and not in the too far distant future, will be based on what you think. You'll just be able to think things, and it will do things. So here's a situation where there's a man, and he's being told, The fairy tale was filled with magical adventures in a charming, enchanted forest. And then he thinks about it, and then AI will read back what his wavelengths communicated.
In a charming, enchanted forest.
So the human's thinking now.
The fairy tale had lots of magic, journey, forest magic.
So that was AI's interpretation of what the man thought after he heard those words, which is not really all that bad. So these are just a couple of highlights to sort of entice you a little bit. Now, what is AI? And here's a situation where, there's some monks basically saying, well, I've just invented the question mark. And the monk says, why? Why do we need AI? What's going on here? How many thousands, millions of years have we gone without it and done just fine? Why all of a sudden do we need it? And welcome to today's presentation, where we'll talk a little bit about what AI is and a little bit about neural nets, which you can just ignore if you want, but as a teacher, I have to torture people at some point. And then the emphasis of today is going to be on some really amazing breakthroughs, the emphasis being on the idea that AI has a lot of really wonderful things for humanity. And some of these breakthroughs are stunning. So with biology and physiology, we'll study AlphaFold, which is a protein modeling device and involves a lot of chemistry. We'll study a little bit about astronomy with the new observatory that's being built in Chile, but it's a completely digital observatory, and AI has a lot to do with what it's going to be viewing. These are really huge breakthroughs in science. This will be followed by a live demonstration, and I mean lively, and Aidan is going to share some things with us. Well, you want to say anything about that?
I don't know what's going to happen, because I really just we'll get to find out what happens.
Okay. Now, is this going to be something that you're going to show us or tell us? It's going to be a demo of something, though.
Yeah, I'm going to demonstrate ChatGPT, which is it sort of set the world on fire and got everybody really interested because it kind of shocked people when it came out.
Okay. So one of the big overriding themes, thank you, I'm looking forward to that. One of the big overriding themes is, what is AI? Is this some sort of a nefarious science fiction creature that arrived on an alien ship somehow? Does it have a personality? Is it a living thing? What is it? I mean, what are we really talking about here? And we want to sort of peel back the layers of the face of AI. But one of the big questions that'll probably come up in discussion is, does it have consciousness? Or will it have consciousness? Or can it have consciousness? And, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been commenting on AI. And his whole perspective is that AI can be very good for helping humanity, especially in underdeveloped countries, that it could provide them with infrastructure that's beneficial. But let's not make any illusions that it will have consciousness ever. It will never have consciousness. And he says for a moment of consciousness to arise, it must be preceded by a previous moment of consciousness, namely a human. Only humans will have consciousness. No machine, no matter how good it is or how much it mimics or even looks like a human, will not have consciousness. And then he, in the same talk, gave a comment. Will be 89 on July 6th, where he says, my face looks young because I'm working on developing my consciousness, and I always try to keep my mind calm. So we're one behind, sorry. So if it doesn't have consciousness, what is it? And so we're told here by David Hassabis, who's kind of a computer genius behind DeepMind, that AI is really like a generalized Hubble telescope that helps us see further in many areas of science. So it's going to allow us, and we're going to discuss today, what areas of science and how. And so many of these breakthroughs he's made are pretty tremendous. So I approached ChatGPT and asked it a question, can you draw a face that represents the essence of AI? Can you do that for me? And within, I'd say, 1.5 seconds, it gave me this, with this description. A face that embodies artificial intelligence, integrating elements like circuit patterns, a fusion of human and robotic features, neural network motifs, and futuristic eyes within a color scheme of blues, silvers, and blacks. This portrayal aims to capture the essence of AI's complex, interconnected nature and its evolving role in our lives. But beneath this, I said, draw me the same face, but use only numbers to do it. So it gave me this, because essentially AI is numbers and their relationships. And we all should have listened a lot harder in math class, because today a lot of that will come to bear. Now, beneath these numbers are relationships between numbers, and that's basically computer code. Are you on board with that, Aidan? So when we're dealing with computer code, we're basically dealing with numbers and ratios and giving them direction. So you might say, why now? Why hasn't all of this come to bear at a much earlier time? And the reason for that is that we have really fast computers now, and we have ways of collecting a lot of data and processing it really, really quickly. Now, you can say, well, how much data are we talking about here? Well, some of the big AI programs have a trillion parameters. And this all has to be worked through computers over a long period of time. So how fast can they possibly work? Well, Tesla is building a computer called Dojo. 1 Dojo second is the equivalent of a human being doing 1 calculation a second for 32 billion years without sleeping. 1 second. It's beyond our ability to imagine anymore. So this is what's giving the impetus to all of this AI. It's numbers. It's all numbers, but it's also the relationships between numbers that describe the universe. Music can be seen as numbers, or architecture can be seen as frozen music, but beneath it all, there's this sort of abstract reality. Going back to functions, when you were in the 7th or 8th grade and you were looking out the window, the basic message was that everything's connected in discrete ways, so that numbers can be affected by relationships called functions with inputs and outputs. And there are different kinds of functions depending upon how you define it. And you can reverse engineer. So if you go not from the various functions to their numerical expressions, but what if you had a pattern and I asked you to define the function? That's what AI is doing. It's reverse engineering functions and giving us that pattern. And the different functions relay all kinds of different patterns. So how many patterns are there? They're everywhere. Isn't nature sort of like random? No, it's patterns. and patterns that are so subtle that we never even dreamed that they existed, and yet they do. And that's an inverse relationship. So functions are descriptors of relationships between numbers.
Functions describe the world. Everything is described by functions. The sound of my voice on your eardrum, function. The light that's kind of hitting your eyeballs right now, function. The entries you put in your random matrices, function. It's all function. Different classes in mathematics, different areas in mathematics study different kinds of function. High school math studies second degree one variable polynomials. Calculus studies smooth one variable functions. And it goes on and on. Functions describe the world.
Love that guy. Love him. So that's just a really big message that AI deals with functions which describe the world and reverse engineers those patterns so that we can use them. And it does it really, really well. Not a big scary thing, a really good sleuther of patterns. So AI is a universal function approximator. So if I have a data set that actually are the red dots, and the AI program is the blue line, what it's going to learn is how to approximate that particular set of data and turn it into a function that we can use, or an algorithm that we can use. And regardless of what you throw at it, regardless of what pattern, it will eventually learn it. So it doesn't have to have every data point, but it needs some data points, and then it will be able to approximate it through the use of neural nets. It thrives on patterns. Some patterns are very easy, like, if you see like rings in a tree, we can see those and analyze them and relate them to weather patterns or how much rain there was that year. And that's particularly easy for us to do. But there are much more complex patterns. Does anybody know what the pattern on the right is?
Protein?
It's protein, good. And so these proteins, there's millions and millions of proteins, and they're sort of the workers in the cell and so forth. But how are we going to sleuth out the pattern in the proteins? Or something perhaps a little more banal would be cats. So now you look at all those cats and you go, well, yeah, they're all cats. They don't really look like cats, do they? They're really, really different. How did we get to the point to where we would say every one of those is a cat? You ever think about that? We learned by looking at lots of cats from lots of different angles. And so when we see anything that's like a cat, we get it. AI does that for everything. It's like figuring out what connects all these things together. But how? How does it do it? So it can detect the underlying patterns of text, images, video, code, and other systems. But how? Just magic? You just throw it in a big can that's painted red and then it does it? No. What we actually do, sorry, this thing's acting up a little bit. What we actually do is digitalize the data set. So if you have a bunch of pictures, it actually encodes each pixel on the picture and turns it into a number. And that number has a discrete pattern. Then we run it through a neural net, which refines the parameters and starts to make interconnections between similar things and develop a model which we can then query. So it uses something called a neural net. Now, neural nets simulate how neurons work. So neurons have inputs and outputs, and they can interconnect with other things. So too, perceptron models have inputs that run basically through functions and give outputs. But while they're running through, and this is the image on the right-hand side, there are all kinds of junctions that balance and rebalance and balance and rebalance and refeed and rebalance. And this can go on for days or weeks or months until it gets the pattern that it's looking for. And so what we have to do, you can ignore this slide if you want, but what we have to do is have a function that consists not only of variables, but we have to weight the variables and give them a bias. And then as the model works, each one of those is tweaked and smoothed, like taking a really rough piece of wood and refining it down until it's really, really smooth. And then you have a complete system. These can be very, very large. They can be like millions of parameters. It's almost unbelievable to think how big it really is and complex. But by using these big, powerful computers, we can do them. Every Tesla on the road is feeding the data into a big computer that's doing this major, major AI analysis of every single thing a car could encounter and running it through these massive neural nets with the goal of self-driving cars. So again, for a large language model, which Aidan will be talking about momentarily, would collect language as a data set on the internet and then take every letter, every cipher, digitalize it, input that data into a neural net. The neural net learns the underlying pattern of any language, and the completed product can then take queries. And when we ask it something, so when Aidan asks it something, it's an input, and it actually turns the query into numbers, a number pattern, and then compares that number pattern to the large language model that's been already developed, and then says, the probability of it all says my answer should be this, and turns those numbers back into text and language. And we just think it's a magic thing inside the computer somehow. No, it's a very sophisticated machine. David Copperfield could learn from doing tricks from AI. So we talked a little bit about how to set up a project, how to train it, and then how to use it. Of course, this is used in business a lot. So if you're, say, a big bank or a big store or something, and you want to use this, basically you buy the large language model or rent it from Meta or Google or Microsoft. And these companies, have billions of dollars and have built these models, and so they sell them. You couldn't really build one yourself. And they do things, text classification, question answering, and even now, when I call into Amazon or somebody, I'm talking to AI, and I just absolutely love it because they're so polite. But then what you would do is take that and you would fine-tune it. You'd tune it to the needs of your particular need or institution. And that's what the big to-do is about in the business world. But it can also do things like find things. So even back in before the big pandemic, the virus was detected by AI. And the way it did it was by scanning all kinds of newspapers and magazines and so forth from all over Asia and found an anomaly relating to a particular kind of illness. And even though it was disregarded, AI did pick it up. All right, let's talk a little bit about AlphaFold. So the idea here is there's a company called DeepMind, a company from the UK. And the idea was, is there a way that we can take amino acid combinations and find the protein structures that they will eventually become. So for example, we're going to be talking about proteomes, but these particular worlds are all related. So we have a genome, and that's the DNA in human beings, which was decoded in the year 2000. And these genes do things. They actually, your genes will code the proteins that you have in your body using RNA. And then this RNA sort of takes amino acids and gives it the intelligence for the cells to create these structures, these sort of protein structures. So all these are working together. And so the DNA, the genome has about 20,000 genes, and it'll actually transcript about 100,000 of these proteins in the human system. And they all do all these different exotic and interesting things. So for example, here's 13 key systems, different tissues in the human body. There are like 32 areas that they identify, and that each one of them has this whole series of, proteins. I mean, some of them are very subtle. Like, for instance, there are proteins in the retina of your eye that allow you to detect light. We don't normally think that way. We think of structures, but there's proteins in there doing all of this stuff. And so they can do different things. For instance, they cause your muscles to contract, or they make hormones for us. Antibodies are proteins, and hemoglobin in the blood. Enzymes that create reactions, or they can even give structure to your bones and to your skin and different things. And all of these things are actually proteins. But as you can see on the right, they start off as a string of amino acids. There are 20 essential amino acids, and they can form different combinations, not just 20, but they can be thousands of amino acids long, but they're repeating these same 20. And then they eventually fold up into structures. And they're molecules, and they're sort of the workers in the cells. They do pretty much everything in the cell. Now, here's the 20, and now, because we're going to go to AlphaFold here in a minute, you'll notice that each one of these has a one-letter code. So when we want to encode amino acids into AlphaLink, we'll use those letters. So go ahead and memorize that chart. That's a problem for you? All right. And then these amino acids will form a primary structure and then evolve into the quaternary structure. The big discovery that has been made is that the code can be translated into the structure because AI has detected the pattern that does it. Now, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but before AlphaFold came out, scientists would take sometimes years to detect the structure of one protein. There are entire PhDs in which the individual just worked on one protein, one, and that was really hard to do. But now we're starting to get a way to do it much more easily. They're very exotic structures, and they're very, very small. I mean, if you take your credit card, the thickness of your credit card, there's like 800 proteins in that kind of distance. They're extremely small. And so the dogma of molecular biology is that the DNA transcripts into the RNA, which translates the amino acid sequences into these proteins. And they look something like that. We used to have to use X-ray crystallography or nuclear magnetic resonance, etc. All these exotic machines, really, really difficult to do. So they found about 170,000 doing it that way, but there are millions and millions and millions of proteins, so it's really slow going. So what DeepMind did was, by taking the 170,000 proteins that we do know about and inputting them as data into a neural net, and was looking for the pattern. What's the holy grail here that turns those amino acids into these particular types of structures? What is that? And it ran it and ran it and ran it and found it. It found the algorithm that turns particular patterns of amino acids into protein structures. So here we are at AlphaFold. This is on the internet. Anybody can use it, and I'll just run a couple of them. So here's E. coli, and take care of that. Take care of that. And there's all kinds of different versions, but for our purposes, it's okay. And boom, there's the protein. It actually mapped it for us. And so these structures actually correlate. Make it a little bigger for us here. And then start to twist it around. So what it did was take the code. Now, if you look at the top here, I think I have, yeah. All right, so if you look up there, that's the amino acid code. So those have somehow gotten encoded here. Maybe AI could do, somebody that could run a computer. All right, so if we blow up part of the protein, what we're seeing in here are the amino acids that make up the protein. And so if you look at the top up here, you see that little red dot? That's the amino acid that corresponds with that part of the protein structure. We don't know why it does it. We don't know how it does it. We know that there is a structure now. And that, my friends, is amazing. So how many could it do? We had 170,000. It did 200 million. 200 million. Unbelievable. And so now scientists, when they're doing things or working with any aspect of biology, if they need the structure of that protein, they literally go to this program and look it up and then use it. And the probability is over 95% accurate. They say probability because it's not being done experimentally, it's being done on the basis of probability. So we have this breakthrough here that has occurred. Let's do another one, maybe E. coli. And so you can look at it and shift it around, but if you open it up a little bit, what you're going to find are these amino acids in here. And so as I select them, you'll notice the red dot at the top opens up. Yeah.
Pardon the ignorance, but so why does knowing the structure help?
So that's a great question. If you're going to, well, first of all, and this is coming up in just a second, but we are now able to make discoveries by examining different protein structures. One of the things that has been discovered in the lab now is that individuals with Alzheimer's have a particular protein in the brain, which has been actually discovered, and one of the amino acids is out of line. So the structure defines the function of the protein structure. So the drug manufacturers have found if we design drugs that match the architectural structure of the protein, it will adhere and heal. So now we have the capability of sort of almost geometrically designing drugs that match proteins that are out of alignment and correct it. And even prevent them. So there are about 600 human diseases or so. And recently when I went in to see the doc, he told me, because we always talk about this kind of stuff, and he told me that human beings like Aidan are going to live to 120 because we're making so much advancement on the nature of these diseases now with these protein structures that we're starting to be able to design drugs and make predictions and figure out how to realign things so that people won't be pestered by a lot of these things. That's a pretty amazing thing. So you might say, oh, I don't like AI. I like AI now. AI is really going to help every human being on planet Earth in ways we could never, ever do before. Never. No human being could do this. So maybe one more here. And they're all a little bit different, but you have the opportunity here to examine these things. These are actual real protein structures that do things. Now the color of it actually is the probability of accuracy. So if it's dark blue, it's over 95%. If it's light blue, it's like 90%, and so forth. So we've reached a point where we're making these really huge breakthroughs, and really happy for that. So discovery of drugs, we can find, if we find genetic variants, we can now connect that with the proteins. We can sort of figure out, because a lot of the proteins work together, and we can start to figure that out. And even the potential for our artificial engineering of the proteins. Sorry, this is kind of acting up a little today. All right, so the big discovery is that protein shapes correspond with their function in terms of the sequence of the amino acids, and the underlying pattern was sleuthed out by AI. Sorry, this thing's really acting up. I'm not sure why. Also, they're discovering new classes of antibiotics to kill drug-resistant bacteria by examining the protein structures in the membranes of some of the bacteria, and then figuring out how to unlock that resistance with a different type of matching protein. In a couple minutes, we'll be talking about plastics. And that minute is now. So we've got this plastic problem. Gosh, I mean, there are gyres in the Pacific that are much larger than the state of Texas, basically just big things of plastic floating around. We have no idea what to do about it. But I wonder if we could use AlphaFold. So TPC is sort of like the root of what's used to make plastics. And for the most part, when we're dealing with plastics, we're downcycling. But less than 10% is even processed. And then we take that 10% and basically, wash it, sort it, shred it, reuse it. But the amount of energy that it takes to do that costs more than it would cost just to get new plastic. So companies don't do it. That's downcycling. But what if we could upcycle? What would that mean? Bio-upcycling. One of the big benefits of AlphaFold is that we're able to now analyze the enzymes that sort of match some of the protein structures and dissolve them. Oh my gosh. So go ahead.
Oh, you might want to move forward.
We're on the wrong one? Sorry. Jumping all over the place. So these enzymes actually sort of match the protein structures being used in these plastics and have a way of triggering them that sort of breaks them apart. So rather than taking 500, 1,000, or many thousand years to disintegrate, it can be done more or less today, type of a thing. And that the original materials that went to building it can then be reused because they're returned to their organic forms. That's a pretty big breakthrough. Pretty big breakthrough. So why not build them so that they naturally dissolve? That's what they're working on as we speak. All of this, now we have an inroad. Before we didn't have an inroad, now we do. So this is like such a major breakthrough that I could barely stay in my chair. And this is the enzyme that they're using, the tapedo, not tomato, enzyme. And it does enzymatic breakdown in the same way that pepsin is a protein that breaks down food in human beings. And a lot of this work is being done at the Center for Enzyme Innovation.
Excuse me, for example, what do you get out of the process?
The process of breaking down the plastics. You'll get a lot of the original amino acids and things like that. But it'll be back down to organic materials of various types. This student's not really a biologist, I know that shows, but I'm studying more biology than ever. We're going to take questions in a little bit. So let's talk about astronomy. What can you tell us about astronomy? Well, AI can now detect celestial objects like supernova, which before were difficult to do. And, we'd have to take pictures, and human beings would have to analyze these pictures, sort of a painstaking task. Is there a way to get AI to do all this sort of stuff for us and just give us the results? And of course, the answer is yes. So there's a new observatory being built in Chile. And what it is it's a digital observatory. So rather than have the images come through some kind of optics and somebody looks at them, it digitizes all of this and actually stores it, sends it to a computer, and the computer then, processes all the data because it's a digital camera and finds all kinds of interesting things. So now their symbol is sort of an interesting one. On the right-hand side, you'll notice light turning into what looks like some kind of a circuit board. It's a digital observatory that is connected to a huge AI system that will analyze things in the sky. Changes in light, changes in position, looking for anomalies, looking for supernovas. And we're really working on supernovas, dark matter, looking for planet 9 in the Kuiper Belt, which has been detected gravitationally, but we haven't found it yet. And the formation of a legacy map, a high-resolution map of the southern hemisphere that will take 10 years. And this is the camera. It's 5 feet across. Notice it's just like your digital camera, but it photographs 15 terabytes a night, which is like sort of the equivalent of, I don't know, 10,000 movies, something like that, all from imagery that it's taking in the sky, and then it feeds that down to the computer for observation. Because it's not as heavy as a traditional telescope, it can move every 5 seconds to take pictures. So it covers a wide range in any given night, and is also capable of very faint observations. It has to be cooled to a very, very cold temperature, like minus 100 degrees Celsius, in order to take out any kind of distorting influence from heat. And man, this is all over the place. So you can see it making these various observations in the night sky, and it will. So if there is a supernova, and these are really important to astronomy because they're not only distance markers, but have a lot to do with the formation of new structures and would give us an idea of cosmology as well. So if there is a supernova, it'll detect it within a millisecond. And then they would focus the camera on that into a deep study. The first 10 days is when it usually emits the most light. So it'll allow us to do that kind of a study as well. It will be actually imaging 40 billion cosmic objects. So the numbers just spiral out of control. And now we have come to the good part of the show. ChatGPT, so let me get you up here. You are number 2, I think. Camera 2, camera 4. There you go.
Alrighty. Go like this.
There.
Oh, yeah, there we go. So I'm mostly going to be sort of introducing ChatGPT to y'all because ChatGPT is it's a large language model.
Yes.
Large language model, and that has been kind of made available. And I think what's really useful about it is that you can interact with it in just sort of plain English and or actually a lot of other languages as well, I've noticed. But it just works with language in a way that is really useful. And I'm kind of going to be showing ways of interacting with it that kind of anyone can access, if that makes sense, rather than like these really cool innovations that
Scientists.
that scientists can make really good use of. So let's see here. Let's have it.
And anybody can get ChatGPT. Yes.
Hold on. No, hold on.
If it's easier to do it upright, that's fine.
I'll do it like this. I'm gonna do it upright.
Go ahead.
You'll have to bear with my slow typing here. All right, so I'm going to have ChatGPT write out a introduction to us for us, and I don't know what it's going to say beforehand because it's not like a calculator. With a calculator, every single time you enter in an equation, it exports the same thing. Like when you put in a certain string, it's going to export the answer. It'll always be the same every time you run it. But with ChatGPT, you don't really know what it's going to say. So let's see here. it's going to run. Oh, no, it's not going to talk for me. That's okay. So it has it on the screen. It says, so certainly I'm a version of ChatGPT called Short Answers, designed to provide quick, concise responses across a broad range of topics. I'm here to demonstrate the capabilities of AI in delivering straightforward, relevant information efficiently, perfect for presentations and live demos. Let's explore the potential of AI together. I've made a kind of a personal GPT version here to give short answers because GPT really likes to be really long-winded and go on forever and ever. So I've told it to be concise. That's one little loose right there. And now I've got another thing here. It's a very practically useful, is what I'd say. So one way people can use this thing is as like a wall to bounce ideas off of. When you're learning about anything, it's often great to do so as a conversation with somebody else. That's often the best way to explore anything. And GPT can kind of serve as that what's it called? That wall to bounce things off of. So for instance, you can get sort of advice. And the advice it's going to be what it thinks you should know based on what it's learned about similar questions. So here it's talking to my nervousness, and, what's it called, which I appreciate. So, yeah. One of the examples I want to show you guys is how it can be used. Oh, yeah, I did lose it.
There we go. No worry.
Right. So I want to show an example of how a person can use GPT. If you already have a little bit of information about what you want to do, you can use GPT to very quickly get you to a solution which would have taken a lot longer to get to otherwise. So we're going to ask GPT to program a maze for us in Python, which is a programming language. So.
Can you verbally talk to GPT?
Yeah, I could do it as a conversation. I would say that its accuracy and understanding is not as good as some speech-to-text things, so that's why I'm going to do it by text. But you can, and I could do that right now if I wanted to. I'm going to make a small change to this prompt. So people who interact with AI frequently call themselves prompt engineers because finding the right words and the right input to give it so it can give you sensible output is a lot of the challenge. So I'm going to actually ask, so you can kind of change things around. So here it's going to create something that I hope will run. So we'll see what it does.
Oh, wow, look at that. So it's giving you code?
Yeah, it's generating the code right now. And it often also gives you a description of what it's trying to do with the code. And sometimes the code it gives you isn't exactly what you want, or it doesn't exactly run as you like, and you can kind of go back and change it and ask it to update itself. So it's given us some code to run all this, and I think it might work. We'll see what it does. See what it does. So I've copied the code. I'm going to pop it into here.
What are you popping it into?
Oh yeah, so I'm popping this into PyDroid 3, which is a it runs Python on your phone.
Compiler.
Yeah, it compiles Python. So I've popped it in, and let's see what it does.
No.
All right. So it did that.
Bravo.
I'd call that maybe a C effort. Sometimes it does better, sometimes it does worse.
What is that?
It's a maze.
It's attempted to make a maze out of hashtags. And I'm going to give it an update. I'm actually going to start a new iteration, because sometimes if it starts off giving you bad info, that bad info can kind of poison the rest of the thread. So you sometimes have to start over again. So I'm going to tell it to do the same prompt again. I'm going to make a small change to it. Oh, now it's going to do it in asterisk, but that's okay.
Asterisks. It's rebelling.
Well, I told it to. So it would take me much longer to try to implement this as code. It would probably take me at least a couple hours to refresh myself on how this particular method would work. And so this is much faster. So paste and run.
There you go.
Well, that's another attempt. It's working at it.
That's a good
It's
one.
trying.
That's a good one.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't understand how to do anything. All it understands is the pattern in which it kind of expects to do something. So a lot of times you have to work with it, but yeah.
Can you do that in 3D?
Could I ask it to make
so
a...
I could go through it?
Oh yeah, that would be really cool. That would be really cool. Not for Python as with this text. Yeah.
I love going through mazes.
Yeah, right? Yeah, me too. Yes, precisely. Yeah. So that's my demonstration for the phone. And then I was going to go to the computer.
Yeah, sure. So go ahead and just jack in.
So let's try to see if this works. Here. Oops. Hat. Oh wait, no. This one goes here.
Okay, you're live.
There we go.
Boom.
Alrighty. So what I wanted to show you today was a little bit how to. I'm going to ask it to make a web page for us
Whoa.
in HTML. HTML is a markup language. HTML and CSS are the markup languages that are the backbone of all web pages. So, and I do not have that much knowledge about HTML, and it's going to fill in the gaps for me. And allow us to get started. So, all right. You guys have been getting some previews of all these things.
Aidan,
Yeah.
is the, by saying impressive, is that an example of prompt engineering?
Yes, I'm attempting to get it to do, to work a little bit harder at making it look good. But yes, that is precisely what impressive is supposed to do right there. We'll see how it does.
Is that HTML?
Yes. So it's so before it was making code that was Python, and now it's making the code in it's making HTML. One thing that is kind of fun is that you can put in code and then ask it to try to implement the same thing but in a different coding language.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
And HTML is for web pages.
yeah.
Okay. It's fast.
Yep.
So this is all just text. You're making a request. It's doing the work.
Yes. And because it's text, that's kind of why it's so good with it, because ChatGPT is really good at text. So,
Large language model.
yep. So I've asked it to do two things, to give me both HTML and CSS. We're going to start with the CSS. This is a website called neocities.org, which allows people to make simple web pages using HTML. So that's what it's for.
Okay.
So we're going to go over here, edit. So I'm just gonna,
Nice.
this was already here. Delete it, replace it with what ChatGPT just gave me. And I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go over to here, no wait, to this one. And copy the HTML. Go over here. And go back to the dashboard. Edit. So this was the boilerplate information that was already here at this for this website. Replacing it with what ChatGPT just generated. Save that. Dashboard. And the other thing I'm going to do is Control-Shift-Delete and clear my cached images and files. And then go see what happens. Hey, here we go. So it has generated something. I'd asked it to give me a navigation bar to go to different pages. Right here is an about page that just has the generic stuff that was already there. But I could ask it to populate the about page if I wanted to. I think most of the time a website has, for a school, has a really nice image in the front that kind of like invites you into the web page, right? Or into the school. So
That was cool.
I think we need that for this page.
It actually worked.
School. use, what sort of, we could do like a photography here, but I think we should do something more inventive, like maybe like a painting style, maybe like I think pointillism. Use pointillism. As this. Oh, and have penguins. Okay. As a style. Also include penguins. Make everything better.
Oh, for sure.
Penguins.
Does it ever write back and say forget it?
Yes, it sometimes does, especially if there's too much going on and if you're in a really busy time of the day. It might go, oh, I'm tired, I can't do this right now, and just shut you out. Because it's not doing this on my computer, it's going back to the central servers and doing it there. And it has a finite amount of resources, even though it has a lot of resources. So sometimes it does just say no. So it's going to create the image for us.
Is this Dolly?
Yeah, so it's using DALL-E, which is, I don't believe it's a large language model. I don't think you would call it that. It's something else.
It's an extension of it.
But it's
symbolic.
Yeah.
It looks like education.
It looks like us.
So let's go this. Let's download this.
That's cool.
Go to
biology class.
to my downloads. Crete. Rename this. No, that's not what I wanted. I think that's going to work. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to DALL-E. Or actually, I'm going to go back to ChatGPT. And I want to include this image in my web page. Please update the code to include, actually, include the image.
Am I seeing something that I'm not really seeing? That all looks like naked women.
I think that you're not really seeing it. There are a bunch of penguins, and they're painting on, and there's kind of some birds and colored pencils. It's sort of made it up. You have no idea what it's going to produce sometimes. So.
But it's not naked women.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No naked human beings in there.
Tell the police we don't need them.
Include the image. Also, yeah.
That's not really pointless.
Yeah, it might not have been right. Well,
If you look closer, yeah, it's pointillistic. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
use,
The dots, all the little dots.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some parts of it.
So it's generating for us.
All right, cool.
It's nice that it remembers your whole session,
Yeah,
so you can have a continued dialogue, and it keeps the data. You don't have to keep starting over.
yeah, it can keep a certain amount of conversation. As the conversation goes on, and if you give it a lot of rules to follow, it can start to forget some of the rules you've given it. So it's got limits, but it can be really nice to be able to continue a conversation and kind of change things. Yeah. So let's see here what it's done for us. Copy code. nice. Oh, save. The other thing I need to do is add that dream image. Cancel. Upload.
Can I ask who has access to this right now?
Neosites?
Yeah.
NeoCities?
What you're doing, is it just between you and the program or other sites or neural networks or whatever can access this?
With ChatGPT, I think it's just between me and ChatGPT. It does reserve the right to save your conversations for use in updating its models and stuff. Alrighty.
Maurice, if your question is about does the NeoCities website that he's creating, is that viewable by people on the internet? I think, I see there's a red button up there that looks like share, so probably he would need to click share first.
Yes. And I'm going to do so, let's see if it worked. Maybe, maybe not. Not sure if it updated its information.
It does have a little icon for the image. It looks like maybe it just didn't pull the image in quickly.
Oh, I know what I didn't do. I didn't tell it something important. Just double check something. Oh, yeah. Okay, it told me here that it's named the image creativecampus.png. So I have to change that little thing right there. So hold one moment.
Okay.
Here, edit.
Why didn't it do it for you?
Because I didn't tell it to. I didn't tell it that I had named my file as Dream. So it made up something because it didn't have that information. So there we go. It has updated. It's put the image into the picture.
Very nice.
Not necessarily where I would have put it myself, but yeah. So
Very good.
yeah, I think that was my
Thank you very much.
demonstration.
That was great. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a quick question about ChatGPT?
Sure.
I see that there was a chat 4, and there seems to be different chats. Can you explain the different methods?
Oh yeah, so I have been doing this all on ChatGPT 4, which I access by paying for it. If you don't pay for it, you can get ChatGPT 3.5 is the access that is generally the version that is generally available, which is very fast, but can't really handle complex requests as well as ChatGPT 4.
Let's use the mic so that.
Robert, we still have another section.
Oh, you're not ready yet?
No. We haven't gotten.
All right, so that's our demo. We really appreciate that, and that's not that easy to do. So we want to just go do a little bit on the myth of Icarus and Daedalus, and try to extract. This should take about 10 minutes or so, and this will sort of give us context to our discussion. You know, this is an ancient Greek myth, and one of the best versions told by Ovid. And Daedalus is a character that starts out in the myth as being sort of a Renaissance man. He has these tremendous gifts and skills, not the least of which is being an artist that can actually create carvings and statues that are actually lifelike. And that individuals repeatedly walked by and started talking to some of them because they thought they were alive and real. He could do any type of engineering, any kind of craftsmanship. He was an architect. He worked with some of the first ships and mastering and capturing the wind and so forth. So we have an individual who's sort of cast as a kind of Leonardo da Vinci. And as the story emerges and unfolds, we find that his particular skills are very great and widespread. So along the way, he's working for King Minos, or actually a king in Athens. And his sister comes to him and asks if he will work with her child, Talos. And so Talos becomes his apprentice and is very bright and learns quickly and starts to outstrip the abilities of Daedalus, which makes Daedalus like really upset because he's got this tremendous sort of hubris. So at a certain point, he throws Talos off the roof in an attempt to kill him, and then he won't have competition. But Athena, who is nearby, catches Talos and turns Talos into a bird. Nevertheless, Daedalus is chastised for his actions and sort of has to start wandering to find a new foothold. So he goes to Crete, where he starts to work for King Minos. And King Minos is building this fleet, and Daedalus helps him engineer new ships, faster ships. He uses his knowledge to craft all kinds of things that are necessary for ships and how to catch the wind better, and the kingdom becomes a formidable one. And therefore, the king is very pleased with Daedalus. While he's there, he has a child called Icarus. Icarus doesn't really appear to have very much interest in his skill, but nevertheless, he has a child. Along the way, something curious happens. King Minos asks for a boon from Poseidon. He asks for a white bull, and the white bull emerges out of the ocean. But in return, he was supposed to give Poseidon a gift of some sort, which he wasn't able to do. So what happened is that his wife starts to manifest very strange behaviors and wishes to have a child with the bull. But the bull isn't willing. So she asks Daedalus to help her. And in the myth, he crafts a wooden cow. It is out of wood, and carves out the inside, covers it with a skin of a real cow, and then she climbs inside the cow and is able to beget a child by this bull. And this is the child, from the side. And the child is clearly half animal and half human. And when King Minos finds this out, he is really quite outraged and upset about this. And so he decides to cast him into a maze, which he asks Daedalus to construct. So Daedalus, being the engineer that he is, makes this tremendous maze. And it's a maze that really nobody can find their way out of. And they keep the beast in this. And he stays there for a period of time, and then the king, once a year, summons 7 males and 7 females and feeds them to the animal as a way of trying to keep people in line, which after a point doesn't go over too well. So they have a Greek hero come, and he slays the Minotaur. And the king is outraged about all of this because Daedalus had a hand in it, and decides that he will keep Daedalus captive in his own maze forevermore as punishment for helping the queen and for, bringing on the end of the Minotaur. So he's cast into this prison where there's this just enormous, complicated maze, and there's a tower in the middle of it. But he's kept there with his son, Icarus, and the two of them just kind of hang out there. So Daedalus, being, the engineer that he is, he's an inventor. He doesn't have very many resources, but starts to think of a way to get out. And so he looks to the sky and notices that he has feathers from birds that have been flying by, and he collects them and organizes them. He has wax from candles that they're allowed to use, and he has string. And from these, he engineers and constructs systems of wings, and actually is able to use them to fly, and has the idea that we'll escape with the use of these wings. So he teaches his son about these wings, and he makes 2 pairs, and then is sort of instructing him how to fly, but also how to take care when he's flying. So he says to him, "Let me warn you, Icarus, to take the middle way in case the moisture weighs down your wings. If you fly too low or if you go too high, the sun scorches them. Travel between the extremes. And I order you not to aim towards Bootes, the herdsman, or Helis, the great bear, or towards the drawn sword of Orion." Those are constellations. "Take the course I show you." And so they take flight, and they start to fly around. And of course, Daedalus has a lot of experience, but Icarus is still a very young person and has all kinds of I'm not sure that applies to me, that kind of thing, and starts to fly. And he flies high in the sky and notices the sun and seeks the warmth and starts to think, well, how high can I go? I'll just fly as high as I can possibly go. This is thrilling. Forgetting all of the instruction that Daedalus gave him about the wings, and they're made out of wax. And if you get too close, if you go to the extreme, it will melt and cause all kinds of disasters. But he does anyway. And as the myth has it, falls from a great height in the sky, and that is the source of his undoing. So Daedalus is, of course, surprised because he took care to try to instruct him, but the Icarus, who could represent our culture and society today, does not heed that. And so the myth has all kinds, although it's an ancient myth, has as much relevance for that time as it does today, because Daedalus, although he had tremendous skills, just like we have tremendous skills today, we have lots of ability, lots of machines and computers and access, but we have tremendous hubris, and we are very proud of what we can do, and we want to do more, and we want to go higher, and we want to make it much, much more extreme, but we haven't really given due thought to how we should use this. How should we use these new wings that we've built, these AI wings? And then Icarus, who is using it, he didn't invent the wings, but he does have access to them and uses them, has tremendous impetuousness. He just, is entitled, and I can do this. This is my tool now. I can use AI any way I want. I'm beholden to none. And these are facets of our society. So there can be companies that say, well, I want to build weaponry. I want to, create something that's perhaps polluting or distresses the resources of the earth. And so we, are often taught, well, we should have this great daring and be very, very bold and go as high as we can. But what about humility? And don't we have to consider that there might be a balance between those two extremes and that we should go slowly, a step at a time? That way we'll have an opportunity to balance and to correct and to, not create a lot of damage by being a lot more moderate. So the question rises, well, what is a proper attitude when we're dealing with fire or wings or AI or nuclear energy or anything that we could use our sort of divine resources to construct, but forgot to consider the ethical and moral implications of what the results of these will be? So great gifts don't come without responsibility. The human mind is a great gift, but with it comes tremendous responsibility. And it seems like one of the great lessons of the myth is that we need to consider that. And of course, we love this ancient proverb, fools rush in, where angels fear to tread. So it's not a matter of just going higher and bolder, although we should still try. Let's not become passive or, just simply a culture that doesn't do anything. Because Oscar Wilde says, never regret thy fall, O Icarus of the fearless flight, for the greatest tragedy of them all is never to feel the burning light. Although I don't think he means that literally. I think he means that in terms of flying with the human spirit. So at this point, we've sort of cast the discussion into a context, which I think we can all use, and we can now go to Q&A. So your contributions are invited and welcome.
We're going to go in a self-driving car.
Okay, I'm going to be using my wings.
From what I understand, I thought it was interesting that you said that the pandemic was forewarned by AI and we didn't take any heed of the warning and the rest is history. But we were also warned about AI, that it was too soon to let it go to the public and also not to be teaching robots to code themselves, and both of those things have happened. So in fact, it's too late now for us to make choices. And they say it's the first time in history we have ever given our power away to something more intelligent than ourselves. And by 2037 or something, when GPT-5 is released, the intelligence will be 1 billion times more than our intelligence. So that's, but it is the only way now they can control the future of AI is by worldwide closing down the internet and everybody agreeing to close it down at the same moment. So it's almost impossible to stop it now. So maybe the Icarus story is a bit late to be told.
Yeah, it's
also, the other thing is that the US military is this year creating robotic killer pilots. And maybe China's doing the same, maybe Russia's doing the same, and we don't even know who chooses who the enemy is. Do the robots choose who the enemy is, or do the army choose who the enemy is, or who chooses? And who is responsible if these killer pilots go rogue? Who will be held responsible? So it's not just positive. I mean, it's great to see the creativity and all that sort of thing, but really we're in a serious situation. that's gone beyond being able to have any regulation on how it's used. It's too late now.
Well, hang on. Good point. Aidan, what do you think?
That's a lot of many points.
Just one comment. I'm not
More
scared-
points?
I'm not scared of the AI not having intelligence. I'm scared of robots that. I'm not scared of robots not having intelligence. Oh wait, now what am I trying to say? I'm scared that the robots won't have intelligence or consciousness. I mean, sorry, I'm confused.
Okay, well, we have some thoughts on
It
that.
would be better to have robots having consciousness.
We've got them.
Yeah, I think that one of the interesting things about AI is that most of the time when you design a machine, you can understand why a machine works by taking it apart and looking at it. And with AI, I think a large part of the process with neural networks is that you don't understand all the linkages between the machine to understand how it works. And that makes for interesting challenges when you're trying to figure out when it's messing up, why is it messing up in that way, that's one part of the question, and the other part of the question is the moral question of who's responsible for what things developed with AI do, I think.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think the myth brings out, at least to this student, the idea of the use of power. That any power can be used for good or ill. If you take fire, fire can be used for good or for ill. But don't blame the fire. And no, I'm not saying you are. Don't blame the fire, don't blame the AI, blame the people who make these things. So it's really a function of human beings taking responsibility. Now, I know that people think it's completely out of control and that we'll never be able to harness AI. However, the so-called killer robotics is not even close to very far advanced for now. I mean, it does, sort of mercantile things, but if you go to Boston Dynamics, which is the leader in robotic structures, they can't really do very much yet. And the leading experts in the world that make AI structures say we're still a long way away from the so-called killer robots as seen in the Terminator and so forth, but that it has been instigated by the news people to a large extent, and there can be point and counterpoint. But what perhaps is more valuable to focus on, in addition to that, the major breakthroughs. So let me ask you this. AlphaFold is one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs in the last 50 years. But let me ask you this. Who knew about it before today? Raise your hand. 1, 2. Come on. How did that happen? This is like a major breakthrough. And you don't even know about it. But we know all about the killer robots, and they're coming, they're at the door right now.
We know about the pandemic.
Well, so in other words, there's a lot of good going on, and we could perseverate on either. I would say, let's light a candle in the darkness. And all the major tech companies and President Biden are trying to put together a plan that perhaps can control it to a large extent, but it'll be a back and forth struggle without a doubt. You can call me whoever you want.
I'm going to call my mom.
I have a comment and a question. My first comment is, when humanity decides to be kind, we simply will defund our bombs. So that is a solution to having AI be kind. It's up to humanity to have that priority. That's my first. And then my second is, the reason why I knew about AI working with proteins is because I listened to biohacker podcasts. And what they're doing is, you can now get your genes tested and figure out what is missing in your genetic code that helps your DNA work smoothly and efficiently, because we're always presented, we need to be adaptable, right? So now they're using the information from AI to figure out what proteins you need. You don't even need a drug, it's simply proteins. And then through that, that's how they're gonna help us all live a longer, healthier life, is simply augmenting the proteins in the body. So my question to you is, I noticed in one of your slides when you were talking about the neural net, there was a function for bias. And I was curious if either one of you understand how AI, how they're programming in that element of the function regarding bias.
Yeah. So bias is a computer science term in that context where you're able to sort of emphasize or give greater weight to certain avenues than you would give to others. Sort of like, this is a 1-lane road, this is a 2-lane road, this is a 4-lane road, and so forth. So you can give it a bias because that's what you want to emphasize at that point in the program. And the weights actually are dynamic, like they're changing as the program grows and refines and learns this is less important than that, so less weight to this and more weight to that, and the bias can also change. So it's a way of introducing a dynamic structure into a program, something like that.
I have a question back.
Okay.
Well, my question is different than this, though. Did
Go.
you have a follow-up comment?
No.
Oh, okay. Early on, you showed a gentleman thinking about a magical forest, and then the AI describing it in words. It seemed to me that the presupposition of that demonstration is that there's a functional relationship between the thought that might not be in words of an individual, like imagining being in a magical forest, that there's a one-to-one relationship between their imagination, their mind activity, and the brain waves that are actually coming out of their brain. Is that necessarily true? I mean, we don't know, of course, but what comments might you have about that?
Right. So I think you all heard the question. Now, the brain is really complex, and there's all these dimensions. But at some physiological level, when we think, like, let's say we're thinking about what we're going to say, it causes some kind of a reaction in the brain that's electrical, and that electrical signal can be sensed, can be actually recorded. They have, I forget what they call them, but you can have your brain imaged in an MRI, or they have sort of a skull cap that they use with sensors on it, and it can measure these things. So we're not saying it's the higher order of thought, or it would understand your motive or why you're saying it, just that you're saying it, and that it causes a physiological response that is measurable and can then be used to control various instruments. I know for a fact that computer companies are already working on this and have working models of it. Why would we need it? Well, there are individuals who maybe don't have the use of one or another of their faculties, and that this would allow them to manipulate things, or even to speak when they can't speak now. So it's dealing with, no doubt, the lowest aspect of the brain, but it is measurable. And I think the underlying idea is that everything has a pattern, that there's an intelligent basis to everything that can be measured, although it's not necessarily the highest thing that we're doing right now, but it's something. So brain waves are measurable, and then we can match it up with, a pattern, and then we can make things that receive the signal and generate speech or whatever we want. You want to add to that?
It's really interesting. It makes me wonder, what's it called, whether such things are like always cross-cultural, like it just sparks a lot of thoughts, sorry.
Okay. It does. And
I guess I got this here. I've been wondering why over the past maybe 10 years or so, my Google search results have gotten worse and worse. And I was kind of surprised to hear after the popularity of ChatGPT that AI has been in popular use behind the scenes for a long time. And I've been hearing terms about the stupidification of the internet, that these AI models are using the internet as their data set, and then it's kind of feeding back into itself as it creates more content and people use AI to make articles. And you can notice that when you search up an article, you read through an article and you'll notice you read for about 30 minutes as it's structured in a way to make you browse through ads. So it's kind of dumbed down this content, and that's now kind of looping back into itself. I was wondering if you could speak more to what that means for the future of AI if the data sets are now being kind of contaminated by their own results.
You might call that problem garbage in, garbage out. And it's a really big problem because what's it called? The data set that trains an AI becomes kind of the scope of what it can do. And so if you have a really good data set, like the data set that was used to train AlphaNet, and it's a specific data set, what's that?
AlphaFold.
AlphaFold. So it's a specific data set that can create some very good information with high probability of being the right information. Whereas if you, what's it called, take as your data set, for instance, since ChatGPT kind of scraped the internet, now if you take what has now been exported from these large language models and put that back in as your input, so the problem of getting good input is very much a challenge, as well as the problem of allowing people to opt in or opt out of having their information used in these inputs, which is an ethical dilemma that people are still working through.
yeah, it's going from ChatGPT to generative AI, so they're not really working so much on that anymore. The next iterations will sort of go to the next level entirely. They changed their whole research center. It used to be Google Research. Now they're just calling it Google AI. Other questions?
So I want to ask more about the guy he thought, and it turned into text. And so there was no wires or anything. So how was it able to, just the electrical energy, and it picked up his thoughts and turned it into text?
So he was wearing kind of like a cap, and the cap had, receptors that could sense the electrical impulse and translate that. Now that's a fairly simple thing to do, actually.
Because they're saying that in the future they won't need cap anymore. I've seen video about how it'll be able to work, but I was just wondering how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So they, anybody could have that done today, and it works fairly accurately, actually.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Is it working? Yeah.
It's working, right?
Okay. All right. I have kind of one of the things I heard is we're talking about the idea of killer robots and stuff with AI, but what about the idea of making robots that are peaceful? Robots that could either take out killer robots, if those are made, but also robots that could clean up the environment, that could do other things like that. And to kind of go along with that question of the amazing power of AI, just a question to both of you, what are some other things beyond all the extraordinary things we've already talked about that you're very excited for that AI could help humanity with in the coming 5 years, 10 years, and even the next 100 years?
Great question. Well, maybe I'll start off. One of the impacts of AI, it would be like, let's say, driving trucks. Now, someone might say, oh, well, what about the truck drivers? Well, it's going to open up a whole new set of jobs. I'm not really happy that human beings have to drive 20 hours a day in a truck. That doesn't strike me as a good job. I'd like the human beings to do something else and let the machines drive the trucks. They've already got that. And in Nevada, they already have delivery trucks where they're driven by AI. So it opens up a whole new way of thinking. In fact, any routinized job will be replaced by AI, like tax preparers, that kind of stuff. And all of those folks will either migrate into a new field of employment, or, and what is probably more likely to happen, human beings will have more free time. How will we survive? There will be some kind of a tax on the companies that have created all these robots and are reaping benefits that would be awarded to citizens as a stipend. And that human beings would then, far from being captive to AI, be freer to come to the Institute and listen to good presentations, to learn, to develop themselves, to cultivate calmness, to cultivate virtues, to read great literature, to talk, to slow down, to think. And all of this could be how we would turn AI into our horse to do the lower orders of work. It'll take a while before these things develop, but by the time that you're my age, say for instance, imagine that world, that there will no doubt be robotic assistants, but they could be managed very, very well and create a better and a higher form of life. That underdeveloped countries could be benefited tremendously by the use of this technology. There could be more equality on Earth, and if there's more equality, there could perhaps be fewer wars and less hatred and cruelty. We have to somewhere along the line uplift consciousness. This might be one way to do it, although I do label myself as an optimist. Do you have a thought on that?
What's it called? I'm more of I'm not necessarily a pessimist, but I think that there has to be conscious movement towards improvement and towards being able to visualize a world in which like labor isn't equivalent to being allowed to live. Like if you're laboring, then you're allowed to live. That's a kind of an old-fashioned way of looking at things. We have to be able to look at it where if we're freeing up this opportunity, freeing up time for people to create, so for instance, creation, like when I made that picture, that drawing right there, what's it called? I would hope that someone would take that as an inspiration to go find a person who's a creative who could actually go and put their passion in art into creating an image for someone. So that when we free up time, that would allow people to develop their passions. That's what I would hope.
Thank you.
I'd like to just add on to what's been said, actually. That takes us back to Gandhi, right? Because Gandhi said, in a village, you have full employment. You may not have sanitation. You may not have hardly enough to eat, or you're going to eat the same kind of rice every day. You're not going to go to the grocery store and have 31 flavors of everything. So my question, Gandhi, though, had a question about technology. He said that it could be a big distraction. But it's not a distraction because we're so affluent, it's a distraction. It's rather a distraction where it leads a lot of other people who are below the poverty level to really suffer, if not to actually die. And so my question is, when we think about this and all the billions of commercial dollars involved with enticing people to do different AI things, oh, gee, self-driving cars, how cool. I mean, I get it, it saves me some time maybe, but a lot of money's going into that. So I'm kind of wondering, my question on the positive side of this is, when you see a village that doesn't have any sanitation, and you see a village that just barely gets on with enough to eat, what kind of initiatives can AI provide, which I think it probably could if I thought about it, to really uplift the poorest of the poor, to essentially exemplify the Gandhian principle?
Well, one thing that comes to mind, I mean, whether it's AI or technology, if you take somebody like Bill Gates, who is a multi-billionaire, has eradicated a large number of diseases in Africa from benevolence, that he gave what he earned to human beings in underdeveloped countries to a huge extent, and went out and started the 50-50 Club, where he approaches other billionaires and says, you have more money than you're ever going to use, give it to me so I can then distribute it. People with cataracts that couldn't have them repaired, but starting a large-scale organization, and they can replace the lenses in people's eyes for $11. And to think that a person, I saw a video on this, a person goes in practically blind and literally walks out able to see. Oh my gosh. And that came from money that he made from technology. My point being, it's not the technology, but the people behind it. What are they motivated by? What direction do they want to take? And I'm especially encouraged by young people, like Aidan, who I had discussions with about this, that the introduction for Aidan was the intersection of technology and ethics, not technology and money. That's different. So to have people that have that viewpoint, spectacular viewpoint, will be the people who invent the wings and also know how to use them. The old model, we have to push the bottom line, the quarterly earnings, all of that. It's a model that's in play, but one that we probably won't follow going into the future. So I know it's a little bit different from what you say, what you're sort of bringing up, but the technology that's being invented can be used for underdeveloped countries like agriculture and so forth. But the Western nations, have to start seeing it in terms of universal brotherhood. That we really need to get back to that basic thing that a human is a human. I don't care what they look like. I don't care where they're from. I don't care how old or young they are. We're all in this together. And that's sort of the basis of the Institute, that we have this sort of universal sense, and we want to learn more so we can be better human beings. And that is why we're here today. Give me 5.
I have a couple of questions. The first one, is it correct to say that the AI is a data-driven system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought. And the other one, can the AI overpower its programmers?
What's that? It's kind of more, so can the AI overpower its programs? Its programmers. The AI, all the AIs I've seen so far, they're very rule-based from a certain level. You tell it what you want it to learn to do, basically. You give it its success parameters. So that's like part of the process of training an AI, is to tell it what you think success is. And so it's based on your requirements of what does success look like. That's what it's going to train itself to do. The AI doesn't decide its success parameters, although sometimes you can give it a success parameter and it'll read it in a tricky or wrong way. So for instance, an AI was trained to win a game, and by winning, it was said to make the game run as long as possible without dying, without the character in the game dying. And the AI learned to pause the game because that's what it thought success was, to run as long as possible. So you have to be careful in the way in what you're telling it its goals are. Like.
In other words, we shouldn't be afraid of it.
I don't know if we shouldn't be afraid of it, but what's it called? I don't think that that's personally, I don't think that's the specific problem that we'd be facing.
We have come to the end of our session here, and I didn't get my question answered either, so. But I'm going to ask Alan Cooley to give the vote of thanks for the Institute.
Well, Aidan and Russ have given us a magical mystery tour of the wonderful world of AI. We were awed by its mind-reading capacity, and we trembled in excitement at the unraveling of proteins with the promise of the end of many diseases. And are we finally going to get rid of all that nasty plastic waste? Astronomy. Will AI soon be able to explain the infinite universe and end the tragic uncertainty of dark matter? We also had an exciting penguin illustration of ChatGPT. So it was all ended on a really good note. I think it was an important warning illustrated by the Icarus myth. And so that's given us all a lot to think about. So we're on our way. Welcome to the 21st century. Thank you, Aidan and
Yeah. That was very cool what AlphaFold can do. All right.
So you comfortable